Okay, so we're in Parshat Shoftim. If you look at the beginning of Parshat Shoftim, again, the psukim seem to be a little bit, the vocabulary on them seem to be a little bit off, which means that they're trying to teach us a very specific lesson. So if you look, it says, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol she'arecha. You should put judges and policemen and enforcers b'chol she'arecha in all of your gates. Asher Hashem elokecha nosen lach, that Hashem gives you leshvatecha for your different tribes. V'shavtu es ha'am mishpat tzedek, and they should judge the people a judgment of tzedek. So first of all, we have the themes of mishpat and of tzedek. We spoke about them a lot here on our shiurim, that's what Am Yisrael is based off of the judgment on the one hand, but on the tzedek, the righteousness and the kindness on the other hand. But what's interesting to me is the first words of this week's parasha. Shoftim v'shotrim, you should have judges and law enforcers. Where should it be? I would have thought that it would say bechol arecha, in all of your cities. But it doesn't say in all of your cities. It says bechol she'arecha, in all of your gates. Asher Hashem lokecha nosan lecha leshvatecha, that Hashem gave you to your shvatim, to your different tribes. What are we talking about? We're talking about that every single city needs to have a court system, and every single city needs to have law enforcement. That makes sense. But why does it say bechol she'arecha in all of your gates? It should say bechol arecha. And then on top of that, the lashon should have been the lashon yachid. It should have been in this. It should have been in the lashon rabim, in the plural, because it's talking about the city. It's talking about the people. So it should be shoftim v'shotrim titnu lachem. You should give for yourself in the plural bechol arecha, in all of your cities. In fact, you don't even need the word lecha. You should just say shoftim v'shotrim titnu be'arecha or bechol arecha. In every city, if you want to make sure that it's every single city, so you can say bechol. Why do you need the word lecha? And why is it in singular? It should be titnu. You don't even need the word lachem. Titnu bechol arecha. So that's the questions that pop out of the text is, why is it in the singular? Why is it even bechol she'arecha? It should be in your cities. So I want to propose two ideas. One is more famous than the other, and I think they're both, as we always like to do, they're very practical to our life, because the Torah is, like we always say, is nitzchi. It speaks to every single individual, and it speaks to every single generation, and it speaks to every single one of us. So the first thing is, the word sha'ar is a very interesting word. You know, I always like to pick apart the Hebrew language because there's so much depth in the Hebrew language. So the word sha'ar, which means a gate, also comes from the Hebrew word lesha'er. Lesha'er means to assume. A lot of times, people, and I would say the majority of arguments and the majority of conflicts between us and our spouses, between us and our friends, between us and our children, between us and anybody on the street, you know why that is? Is because we are assuming that they think something, or that they feel something, or that they did something, and we don't actually know it. We assume it, but we don't know it. What does that mean? You come home, right? Okay, I don't like to... Sometimes this may happen with our wives. Gentlemen, you can tell me if I'm correct. You come home, and you might come late, you might come early, and for whatever reason happened at home, or whatever happened, I'll speak in the personal. Maybe my wife thinks that maybe something happened and that I did something. There was already a full conversation in her head, and when I come home, she's like, well, how come you did that? I'm like, what are we talking about? Meaning there's already a lot of assumptions that went into place. And sometimes we do the same thing, right? With our friends. We assume that they said something, or that they feel something, or because they were quiet and they didn't speak, we assume that they were upset, or they weren't upset. And because of our assumptions, a lot of times we react a certain way. And because we reacted based on that assumption, that created a certain rift between people. That's why the word sha'ar, gate, means lesha'er. A gate is always the dividing point and the entryway between something on the inside and something on the outside. inside the house and outside the house. How do I know what is the threshold in which I cross? It's always the gate. The gate is the opening in which connects the inside and the outside. Now, I have my inner world with all of its emotions. And then there's the outer world with all of the things that are happening around me. And I'm always reactive on the inside to what I see and what is happening to me on the outside. But the question is, am I really honestly judging the situation and making sure that I'm looking at the situation with an objective eye? Or am I just assuming that something happened and I allow my inner work to react very quickly just because something happened? But I didn't actually take the time to try to understand, like a judge. What does a judge do? He looks at the situation. He listens to both sides. He's a shofet. He tries to listen to everything, to look at it objectively, and then to judge, and then to act and be a shoter based on that observation. And that's perhaps what the Torah is trying to hint. And that's why it says it, lecha, for you. This is not just, of course, the Pashup Shot is that we need to create a court system in every single city in Am Yisrael. But there's something deeper over here, because each and every one of us is constantly put in a situation where we are at the sha'ar. We are standing at the threshold between our personal lives and our inner feelings and to what is happening outside of us. And then are we going to be mesha'er in the sha'ar? Are we going to assume in that gate? Or are we going to be a shofet and a shoter? Are we going to be a real judge that looks at the situation objectively and tries to look at the different tzaddim? What's going on over here? What actually happened over here? Let me try to put myself in the situation of the other person, maybe what he felt or why he reacted a certain way or why something happened. When I become a real judge of everything that is happening, not to be judgmental, but rather to judge what's happening to me, to make sure that I'm not just making assumptions. That's already going. So it's a call and a charge to us. Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha, for you, every single person, every single Jew, b'chol she'arecha, in all of your gates, in all of your opportunities to just make assumptions. Don't make assumptions. Make sure that you're a shofet, that you're a judge, and that you're a shoter. Then there's the famous pshat of the Chida, which elaborates on this even more. And the Chida says that every single person has many different gates in his personal life. And the gates are actually those points that connect, the same yesod, that connect the inner world and the outer world. And what are those personal gates? It's our eyes, what we see. It's our ears, what we hear. It's our mouth, what we choose to put into our mouth. Even our nose and what we are going to smell. In fact, our face is the gateway into our life. It also shows other people, by the way, what's going on inside of us. That's why, how do we call our face the place that has all of these gates? We call it panim. Panim means face, but panim also comes from the word pnim, the inside. Because the inside, my inner feelings, they get projected out to the world through my face. So you could see on a person, is he excited? Is there something bothering him? A mother and a wife, a child walks in or a husband walks in, she's like, what's the matter? She's able to read right through the situation because she's able to see the face, and she's like, no, something is off. There's something that is not in the pnimiyut, something is not shalem, something is not complete, because that's what shines through the different gateways. But says the Chida, and he says, in all of our gateways, we need to put a shoter and a shofet to judge and to make sure that there is an inspector that is standing there and is standing guard. What is going into our system? Not only is it a gateway that projects what is happening inside to the outer world, but it's also the way in which we intake information. Since the moment we're born, we're intaking information. What is the information that we are taking into our system? We're all a product of our life experiences, whether they were good or whether they were bad, whether they were difficult and challenging, or whether they were happy and full of celebration. And we all have moments like this and moments like that. And we are a product of the experiences that we have experienced. And we're a product of the sights, smells, sounds that we have experienced, and even the food that we have tasted. They all are mashpia and affect who we are today. And therefore, we need to make sure that there is a guard that is standing guard by the gateway of our eyes. What are we looking at? What are we looking at in our generation? What are we looking at? There's so much to look at. There's so much good to look at, but there's also so much bad to look at. And how many hours a day are we spending on the phone? How many hours? And I'm talking this to myself, because even as someone who's spending time in learning, I spend so much time on the phone, and it's too much. How much time are we spending on looking at other things? Oh, I'm looking something up. How much time do we need to look something up? What are we listening to? What type of stories? What type of gossip? What type of news are we listening to? What type of food are we eating? Right? What type of experiences are we intaking into our life? We need to make sure that there's a guard over there. And says the Chida that somebody who makes sure, and that's why it says lecha, it's for you. It's an individual charge to every single Jew. It's not just every city and every shevet needs to do it. It's every single Jew needs to have the shofet v'shoter. And he says someone who puts a judge on all of these guards, he's zochet to pitchu she'arim ve'yavo goy tzadik shomer emunim. When are we going to be zochet to the final geula of pitchu she'arim, of let the gates open, ve'yavo goy tzadik, and let the holy nation, the righteous nation, enter Yemos HaMashiach, and enter Chai Olam Haba? It's somebody who is able to be shomer on the sha'ar, someone who is able to be a guard and a judge and a law enforcer on his gateways. He's the one that is going to be zochet to pitchu she'arim ve'yavo goy tzadik shomer emunim, that he's going to be zochet, that the gates will open up for him. He's be zochet to an unbelievable life. I think this is a very important lesson for us in our generation. The pasuk goes on to speak about the shochad, about the bribery, and the bribery is, it says that it affects ki hashochad yaver enei tzadikim enei chachamim ve'esalef divrei tzadikim. It's going to distort our vision and our ability to understand things, even a chacham. Now, which chacham are we talking about, right? If I say that somebody is poor, and he says, oh, that person, Reuven, is a rich person. So I don't know how rich he is, because the person who's calling him rich is not so accustomed to a very affluent type of life. But imagine there's someone who's very affluent, and he says, oh, you know, that guy, he's really rich. So then I'm like, oh, if he is calling him rich, so that means he's really rich, right? It's the same thing with wisdom. If somebody who is a fool says, oh, he's a smart guy, so okay, he might be a smart guy, he might be an average person. But if I know that there's someone who's really, really smart and really wise, and he says that person is a smart person, so then I know that that person is really smart, right? If the Gura, the Gaon of Vilna, he's a Gaon, he will tell me, oh, that person is a smart person. So then, wow, he must be the smartest person. And Kol Shekain, if the Rambam says that that person is smart, or if if one of the Tanoim says that a person is smart, if Shlomo HaMelech HaChacham Michol Adam says that that person is Chacham, so then of course he's smart. What if HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself says that this person is smart? That person must be really, really smart. So that's what the Torah says. Ki hashochad ye'aver einei chachamim. The shochad will make us blind and will blur up the vision of the chachamim. Hashem is saying that he's a chacham, and it will blur his vision. So it's definitely going to blur the vision of anybody, and that's what bribery does. So, and if we're talking about bribery, so of course we're talking about real bribery, about cash, about money, about maybe cigars, right? We're talking about bribery that affects smart people, and it makes their decision flawed. But if we're taking the logic that we just spoke about, that we ourselves need to be the shofet, the judge in our eyes, we need to make sure that we're not getting swayed by bribery. And there's always bribery coming our way. The reason why people actually make mistakes is because of the bribery of the guf, of the body. I want to watch it. It's comfortable. It makes me feel good. I know that it's totally warping my decisions and my reactions to life, and it's making me waste my time. It's making me not be a better husband and not a better mother, and I'm ending up wasting my time. There's always this bribery of feeling good, and that's really the challenge of our generation. You know, they created a multi-billion-dollar industry, which is here to help us kill time and waste our time because we have so much free time because we don't have to work so hard because there's computers and there's this. So then what do people do with their time? So instead of understanding that we're in a time period which is getting closer and closer to Yemos HaMashiach, where we don't need to work as much and we can have more free time to learn and to engage in values and in meaning and purpose, we all fall into this trap of the Yetzer Hara of wasting the time that we were given, and time is the most valuable thing that we have. And that's the shochad that we have to be careful of. And I think that's really what this week's parsha is about. It's telling us, make sure to put guards in the entranceway of our personal life. Make sure that we have a judge, that we are not judging other people. We're not assuming, but rather we're judging the situation in an objective eye. Make sure that there's a guard so that things that come into our body, the different things that we're looking at, hearing, eating, smelling, we choose to intake only the proper things and not the inappropriate things. And that will give us the blessing that it will develop our pnimiut, our inside. And then when we radiate to the world who we really are, we'll be happy people, we'll be successful people, we'll be invigorated, we'll be sameach bechelko, we'll be able to help other people because we're happy with who we are, right? So people who are happy with who they are, or matzliach, that are able to give a compliment, to give a smile, to help other people. And that's really the goal and the mission of our life, so that we live a full life and then we can help other people live their lives to the fullest. And to create that type of community and that type of society and that type of vibe around us. And Amir Hashem, that will impact the whole entire world to becoming a much better place. So I want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom as well. And thank you so much for the hearty mazel tovs. I'm really excited about the chasna. And I hope everyone has a great and fascinating Shabbos.